I'm going to reuse my original intro. JJ, there's a PS Vita on my desk. What year is it?
What year is it? Robin Williams gif of screaming.
Well, I looked it up. The PS Vita came out in 2011, so it's still not 2003 or 1999. I don't know what year this exact model was made. I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, JJ.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
We're going to call this a subspace transmission. Though I don't think...
A cyberspace transmission?
I'm just going to let you do the rest of the podcast. I didn't think of that. I should have thought of that.
That was like the first one.
Literally right there, and I didn't see it, which means I am not the one.
Is anyone the one here, really?
Apparently no one is the one.
Yeah.
Well, that may not be true. I don't want to take away from if some ones are the ones or whatever.
Yep.
The story was trying to say.
Yeah, we'll get into whatever it was trying to say, if anything.
But there are definitely ones that are not the ones.
Some of them, yes.
Some ones are not the ones. If you're not thoroughly confused, you know we're talking about the Matrix 4 Resurrections. If you are thoroughly confused, we're talking about the Matrix 4 Resurrections.
And, I guess spoiler warning already, because we're going to spoil the crap out of this movie.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler warning right away in the joking intro,
and
I guess. Whoops.
Oh, no. Whatever. Look, the movie has been out for some amount of time. It was available to stream at home. It was in movie theaters. I think it may still be in movie theaters a bit.
Yeah, the streaming date, the final streaming date has passed the date of this release of this podcast. So,
okay. So it is no longer... As of recording, I think it's still available, but for like 20 hours more or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the time you all are hearing this, maybe you can find it in a theater if you haven't seen it, or you have already seen it and thus are interested in what we have to say about it. They made a Matrix movie, Andrew. That's like kind of out of left field.
They sure did. In my allusion to the opening there, the last Matrix movie was made in 2003. The last Matrix game before this movie was also ended in like 2010 or something like that. Matrix Online went offline in what year? Like 2010, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can look that 2009. Whoops, I was close. Yeah, so like Matrix Online was 2005 to 2009. I think Path of Neo was before that game.
Yes.
And that's it, right? That's like there's no other. I don't think there's any other games out there to really know about.
Nope.
Animatrix was 2002.
It came out before
Resurrections.
Before Revolutions.
Revolutions, because it had stuff that explained how they knew that the machines were coming more.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have been like 2003 before those movies came out, before Resurrection or Revolutions and Reloaded.
I don't know if the Animatrix came out like the year that Reloaded came out, or came out between Reloaded and the next one, or whatever. But
anyway, here's your answer: Reloaded, Animatrix, Revolutions.
Okay, I was close. That was anyway. Yeah. The Animatrix is an interesting thing if you go back to it, because again, all those stories are canon, especially the one that tells you the history of what happened.
Sure is. Also, what's canon is the thing that they introduce in this movie to some people that haven't seen the Animatrix, which is that you can have those bots switch sides.
Yeah, so there are robots on the human side now.
Synthids? What do they call them?
So that is like one type. It's like that's the thing they created to give programs a physical presence. right? Because there are both robots, right? Like the swarms, and like you meet a few of them on the Memnosine, the ship, right? There's a few like robots that are straight up on their side. Then there's also like programs that are on their side, like
Right.
the Morpheus program and other ones.
Right.
Who they use that like weird cube technology or whatever to make real bodies.
Yeah, I was very confused by how that cube technology like looks very hologram like in the beginning of the movie, where it's like he can generate himself into this magnetic cube formation ball thing on the ship, but then apparently they can leave the ship
and you can just go wherever with it. Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. It's, sci-fi movie does sci-fi stuff. Okay, sure.
Yeah. It was just unclear. Anyway, there's so that's explained kind of.
But like, the fact that Morpheus is dead is something that people might not realize is something that was known.
Spoilers, I guess.
Well, we talked about again, we talked spoilers. Like spoilers up top, but yeah, like Morpheus is dead, and they go into it in the movie. They do eventually tell you why you're getting shoot, what's this guy's name? Yasha something?
Yeah, what Yaya. The guy that came back to play Morpheus? Or
yes.
Yahya Abdul Mateen.
Yahya Abdul Mateen II. Yeah.
I've never heard of this gentleman before. He did a great job, I think.
He did great. Yeah, no complaints about his acting.
I like his entrance from the bathroom where he pretends to be Lawrence Fishburne.
There's he has several good scenes of acting Morpheus like or Lawrence Fishburne like that I thought were pretty funny.
Yeah, I would call that Lawrence Fishburne like, and not Morpheus like, I think.
And I think the thing that I'm going to just end up coming back to a lot in this is that I think this movie tried to do too much.
It sure felt like it was a little rushed at the end, I'll say.
Not just the end. I think I
thought the pace at the opening was all right.
So I think like the first third of the movie is my favorite part.
I like I definitely like more scenes from the beginning of the movie in my head when I think about it.
And that's really weird to say because I think all the action is like rear loaded in this movie.
Well, yeah, it has one of the things I wrote down. It has the Matrix 2 and 3 format of talkie, huge, long, extensive fighting forever
action scene
formula. Whereas that's not exactly, I mean, it is kind of the formula of Matrix 1, right? Like once the bank scene starts, it's basically a fight until the end of the movie.
Right.
But it's also a fight and a chase and talking and
I say it's broken up by, Smith philosophizing at Morpheus and, there's good character moments in there despite there being a bunch of action.
Whereas this and the other two movies have that same thing where it's just, okay, we've done all the character stuff, turn on the CGI machine and let's blow everything up. And
so I wanted to ask your opinion.
Kind of ends after Trinity's awakening on the roof, I guess. It starts to have a moment, but that moment is punctuated by me having started to talk during it because things didn't make sense.
So I want to back up a little bit, talking about that like long extended action scene in the cafe.
Oh, the cafe scene is fine. It's after the cafe that I noticed the extent of the. Yeah, well, go ahead.
So, do you? And maybe I am like becoming a more discerning action movie watcher or something. Something was weird about the fight choreography throughout this whole movie. And I don't know if it's a way it was shot or the way it was like choreographed or what. All the like fight scenes felt kind of bad. And I don't know how to explain why I feel that way. Because I watched the movie again and I scrubbed through it for parts that I remembered and wanted to like rewatch like just yesterday. And the fight scenes feel slow or something.
I did notice that they felt like
I don't feel like
it's weird to say this about
they're
John
punching
Wick.
each other. Yeah,
it's weird to say this about John Wick, but it feels like they slowed it all down for him.
Yes. And even when he's not in the fight, and so like I understand, look, Keanu Reeves is older than he was when they filmed The Matrix. They can't have him running on the wall, right? Like that's not going to.
The dude gets
he would have done it.
Wick movies is my point.
If they wanted to put him in a wire suit and have him do the Hong Kong, run around the ceiling stuff or whatever, I'm sure they could have found a way to make that happen. But they weren't doing that. And so they're not going, like, no one in this movie runs on the walls, right? That was cool stuff that happened in those other movies frequently.
Well, he can't do, the point of this thing is that he can't do a lot of that stuff. Right? Like
Trinity does a slow motion air kickflip or whatever in the first 10 seconds of the first movie.
No, I know. Okay. You mean like the other people should be able to do it?
Yeah. If like they still had like, they could still jump over crazy buildings or whatever, even in the first one without being the one.
I would say that it seemed like the power level of everyone was significantly reduced.
Okay, yes, I'll fully agree with that.
Right?
And I
like
think
even Smith's power level is not Smith level from the previous films.
We're going to talk about Smith. We're not ready for him yet. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with him.
What's wrong with Jonathan Groff?
The actor did a good job of being smarmy and making me dislike him. So, we got that going.
Tom.
But oh God. If your name is Thomas and someone calls you Tom like that, I think you should just like immediately punch them in the face.
Well, that's good news.
Anyway, so going back, still staying on like some of the action scenes, and then they get to that big chase scene at the end. It felt like, now having recently seen the Boba Fett show, it's not the slowest chase scene I've ever seen, but it felt pretty slow for what was ostensibly a group of people on a motorcycle and high-speed cars running through the streets. And just like, and I don't know, was this like a budgetary thing somehow or something? It looked like badly lit and like poorly set up. Like I felt like I was watching people drive across a soundstage in some instances. I was like, why are they doing this?
Because you did watch that.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. And like, they aren't going to build a freeway out in the middle of Alameda or whatever like they did for Matrix Reloaded. Is that one where they built the freeway? Yeah, that's the first one, or the first of the sequels. They built a giant freeway scene, and that's how they made that giant car chase throughout the like back half of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that again.
Mm-mm.
I get it, but you could. A lot of people have done car chases way, way, way better than this.
I think it was hampered by the fact that they were being chased by people, and so to make it tense.
Yeah. But then they started to like, there were some cool parts of that where they like turned the people into suicide bombs jumping out of the skyscrapers and stuff above them. That was
interestingly, I rolled my eyes at the new thing where like the whole movie became about zombies.
Yeah, sure.
I hate I like The Walking Dead, but like the damage it has done to popular media in general is significant, where because it was popular, it is now stuck in the mental space of everyone forever that horde mechanics are interesting and fun and exciting. And the idea that this guy can just fill the Matrix with programs that he can turn on and turn into a zombie horde, and we get to watch basically the ocean try to run over people is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's like not.
The thing that was
my biggest
cool.
gripe about the movie is stop zombifying everything. Include like the Matrix doesn't need zombies.
Like, because the thing that was cool before is that you didn't know who could be an agent. That was the whole
could
thing.
be an agent, right?
Well, yeah, but you didn't know who they were watching through, if they were going to turn into an agent at any time. That was why it was risky for them to be out there acting the way they would be, and why they were, like had to sneak around and do stuff underground, and why they stayed in dimly lit alleyways and like goth clubs instead of going out, in the street or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the whole like premise that any person could just turn into an agent when the system felt like it needed to assert control was the cool thing. Now he's just like, I can just take over everyone, then give them black eyes and then make them zombies. And
he's not even taking anyone over anymore. It's saying like, basically the Matrix went from, okay, well, we don't want to have a huge impact on the Matrix systems. And so, we have these 4 guys that can run around and do the thing, which they still have for some reason. I guess maybe because there's warring factions in the machine world now or whatever.
Yeah, so that's their narrative justification for that.
But then also this new architect, whatever you want to call Neil Patrick Harris's
his name is the Analyst.
The Analyst, okay.
Mm-hmm. He calls himself that.
That's fine. Has just filled the Matrix with mostly, it seems like 50% bots that pretend that they're not. And so now you can't tell if someone's a program or human.
So the explanation that is given and in the movie, which again, I agree with you, it's a bad conceit, is that he can just insert his bot program into any person plugged into the Matrix. However,
really? Because
that's what they say. He's like, I can turn anyone into a bot.
Well, because later they imply that they're just programs.
Well, I think the
weird.
The implication there is he turns them into a program, at which point the human is dead or whatever.
Oh, interesting. Because then when he flings them out the window, which I actually thought was interesting.
That part is one of the parts that I liked.
When they hit the ground, they turn into code, which I guess was a better version than making them explode.
I think this was their we don't want to get too hard of an R here move, instead of we don't want to see people literally committing suicide and dead bodies all over the street.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the movie is still rated R, so I guess it wouldn't have made that big of a difference, but I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, that was an interesting use of the
I liked
idea.
That part.
Unfortunately,
I don't want to criticize
that
one because I like
why?
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to criticize that part too heavily because I thought it was good compared with everything else that they did, which I didn't like, at least in terms of that bot stuff. So I don't know, and I think that is the downfall of this movie in a lot of people's opinions. The like back half action is all kind of flat and doesn't leave you with an awesome taste in your mouth.
Okay.
As they're trying to do this like amazing heist / escape / whatever.
Yeah, it was cool that they had an idea for removing someone from the Matrix before their mind was out. That was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was if they had turned more of this movie into like a cool heist, I think I would have been into it.
Oh, so I guess we didn't state we started with the back half is weird / negativity,
so
and didn't state our full opinions on the movie, I guess. Whoops.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Look, I actually kind of like this movie. I don't know. It is a flawed movie, but not bad. I think that's where I come down.
I think that I probably would put it up with like Matrix 2-3 in terms of my interest level. Some moments in 2, especially like that freeway scene, I just get bored.
Yeah. And the freeway scene in Matrix 2 is considered by some people anyway to be like a really great car chase
Is it?
slash action thing. Look, I'm saying it's considered by some people to be that.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe I liked it a long time ago. Now when I watch it, I'm kind of bored.
yeah. I think
I like that movie though. I like Matrix 2, actually.
I think I like Matrix 2 and 3 better than this movie.
I might. Yeah.
But I think I like this movie better than
Matrix 1. Wow. What an opinion, JJ.
Yeah, no. No. But like better than like a random James Bond movie or something.
Okay.
Not like specifically a good James Bond movie, just like a random one of the silly ones that are kind of interchangeable.
I think, I don't know what the discourse is out there, but I do know people directly that have watched it that told me they didn't like it. And some of those people are really into the Matrix, and some of those people are not into it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you go one direction too far or the other direction too far is where probably people would get upset with this movie, because I even noticed things like, man, they sure dumbed down some of the bake your noodle type questions that they had in those first two movies. Not the third one so much.
Yeah, the third one doesn't really have time for any like philosophizing because it's too busy trying to fight a war, you know?
Well, they kind of finished the philosophizing beforehand, and they're just like, okay, now you know what it is and all the things about making choices, and you've made all your choices, and now Neo goes to do the thing. Is the third movie, right? Versus this was kind of like, hey, when we get to be older people, do we lose our self-confidence? Yeah, we do. Oh, okay. Thanks for answering the question.
And like, is this movie less confident than the other Matrix movies? It kind of feels that way, right?
It feels like it was not confident in being as philosophical, or it had something simpler to say, which I think might be true.
It can be both, right? For sure.
For sure. I have not stated my opinion clearly here, and I want to.
Okay. I
like this movie. I think there's a lot of it that I thought was ridiculous.
Sure.
There was a lot of it that was just lazy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's moments in it where I had to rewind it because I couldn't understand Jessica Henwick.
Yeah.
She's a good actress, by the way. I liked her very much. But there's a couple sentences in there where she starts monologuing to herself, and I can't understand her at all.
The second watch was helpful because I sort of knew where the story was going, and I could listen more carefully.
Oh, okay.
And then I didn't have that problem. But yes, yeah.
But it was. There's some interesting thoughts in there, like retconning, or not retconning. Maybe it is one way or the other, but like turning Neo's powers into a power of a dyad is kind of. It was a very Star Wars move, right? Like, and I think that probably turned a lot of people off. And I actually kind of, as a person entering middle age now, finally, technically, liked the idea a little bit that they were saying, hey, some things you do by yourself, and sometimes you need the help of other people, you know?
And I think the first Matrix was somewhat, not that like Trinity had the powers, but that she was integral to him becoming, empowered. Because, if you remember the first movie, he was dying until she told him
physically dead.
Right. And then he came back to life and was like, oh, I am the one now. And, just this time she had her epiphany first, before he was able to get his powers back or whatever.
Multiple times in the movie. Can you fly yet? Like, no.
Okay. The scene, they walk out of the cafe and it's like, Neo, can you fly? And he does the hand down thing, like,
and the bends the ground.
The ground ripples, and then he jumps up and just is like, gets like 2 feet off the ground. Is like, that's not happening. They're like, alrighty then.
It was good. I
laughed.
There's a lot of good.
I laughed very hard at that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good way, like, for them to have like a levity moment.
I really thought Resurrections was a good name, but also they could have called it Matrix 4 Old Man Neo.
Yeah.
You know,
I will say, early on in the movie, speaking of Old Man Neo, as he is still Thomas Anderson. Very early, there are those scenes where he's like looking at himself in the mirror in his apartment, taking his blue pills.
Mm-hmm.
In the very first one of those scenes, you catch a reflection of him.
Oh, more than one, bud.
Oh, but the very first time, like I'm in like the first 5 minutes of the movie, the reflection of him is the other guy, not Neo.
No. So that happens a lot, actually. So
I only noticed it like on this second rewatch.
Oh, okay.
I
noticed it
the first time.
I noticed it the very first time Jessica Henwick's character Bugs talks about Neo. She says and I think that happens before she sees Neo. We see Neo for the first time. Either way, so the first time you see Neo, you actually see his reflection in a computer monitor, and it's not him. You can very clearly see in the monitor that he has like a balding head and weird hair on the sides of it. And then when Jessica Henwick talks about seeing Neo, you see Neo walk off the roof, and as he's falling, it's the bald guy from the awards ceremony.
It's a different guy,
and then about 4 or 5 times you see the reflection, and it's not him. And so I was actually wondering early on if he was being resurrected in the Matrix multiple times. Like, this is where I go to where I thought the movie could have been deeper, right? Where the machines didn't have him, but he was resurrecting himself inside the Matrix, inside other people, and he couldn't figure out who he was because he kept, dying, and you know what I mean? Like, this movie could have been deeper if they wanted it to be, but that wasn't the story they were telling.
And I think I think the story that's set up by the premise in the first third is why I'm more interested in that stuff. Like all of the the meta conversations around like, oh, well, the Matrix is just a video game. What does the video game mean? And as soon as you hear
Lana
Neo,
Wachowski does not like video games, apparently.
Interesting, because she and her sister had a deep hand in making those Matrix video games.
I'm absolutely certain they did, but her opinion of people that make games is not very high. Like, I don't know if you watched. Did you watch past the credits?
It. Oh yeah.
The we need to make a game about cat videos thing.
Yeah,
that was like, oh, okay.
I mean, the thing that I read through that is less an indictment of people making video games and more an indictment of the corporations forcing people to make video games about stuff they don't want to do.
That's cool and all, because that was the character of Smith, and I got that from the first scene when Thomas Anderson sits down with his boss, and the boss makes him make a game he doesn't want to make, and that is the video game industry. But the people sitting around in a room trying to make good games don't sit there and act like idiots the entire time while Thomas Anderson freaks out drinking an espresso in the corner. That made me kind of vomit a little bit.
I think the Matrix as a series just really gets so much mileage out of that Jefferson Airplane White Rabbit song. And I don't know that it can ever be matched, Yeah. That scene is just good. Also, I found this
I like the scene when Neo's breaking down.
It's good. Yeah, it's very good. I found this comment online, and I want to give credit to this other person who came up with it. A person on Reddit named The Little Brave Potato.
Oh, I like that. That reminds me of the Brave Little Toaster.
That's a good movie too.
Also, Brave should go in front of Little.
Nope.
Always.
That's not what this is.
I understand. But in English, Brave goes before Little.
Okay, English major. Thanks.
Okay.
Did #gamer Thomas Anderson really win back the heart of his lover from a man named Chad?
Yes. I laughed and Katie didn't understand why I laughed.
Me too.
When his name
Me
was
too.
Chad, I laughed very
heard that.
hard that his name
I
was
heard
Chad.
that when it's just like, oh, this is my husband Chad,
Oh.
and I like
I lost
out loud laughed. And I was watching with my wife, and she looked at me, she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, that's extremely funny, because they did that on purpose.
100,000% with the video game. The video game being a thing, they named him Chad on purpose.
Also, do you know who Chad is?
Yes, I do know who Chad is. He's I don't know how to Stahelski, I think is his last name.
Stahelski, yeah. The director and Neo's original body double, and also fight choreographer of the John Wick movies.
Director of John Wick, I think. One of the two directors of John Wick. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was in the Matrix movies.
If I didn't say director, I meant to say director.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he is big name in Hollywood.
Oh,
He works on. I think he worked on a bunch of stuff like Expendables and.
And another comment from someone I saw said they put Chad Stahelski in the movie and they didn't have him direct the fight sequences. What are they doing?
I can't make decisions for people on some stuff,
Yep. Also, I don't want to harp on this too much because it's not really the problem. But the very end of the movie, Neo and Trinity.
Dredd.
Yeah,
no wonder Dredd was good.
He's done a ton of good movies. Neo and Trinity fly off into the sunset, and a cover of Wake Up comes on.
Yeah, I noticed that it was a female band. I don't know the name, Brass something, because it was a reference to. Anyway,
that cover just isn't as good as the original, man.
What can you do? I think there was a statement being made there.
Absolutely, there was, and I get it, and I support the statement. I'm just like,
I don't know
if you are coming into the end of that movie,
support the statement that it's just a statement.
Well, I think it's a good statement to make. Like, hey, her time now, whatever. If you're feeling let down coming off the end of that movie because you didn't like the final action scene, they get their like revenge on Neil Patrick Harris, and
that was
she kills
good. I like that.
She kills him a bunch of times, which is actually very funny and good.
And then snaps to bring him back. I like that too.
Yeah, it's just like she punches his jaw off and then snaps to bring him back, and then he like says something like, "Can't you control her?" And she like punches him across the room, and it's just like very good.
I have a hard time.
So if you're feeling let down by that, and then like the cool, one of the great things about the end of the first Matrix movie is he just flies off. There's no explanation about what happens, and then
why he flew off. Yeah,
and then Wake Up starts, and you're like, this is awesome. What an awesome ending to this movie. And just that cover doesn't have the awesome feeling at the end the way that first one did. And it is what it is, It's just
the music in general was not the same, right?
Yes, the soundtrack wasn't as good.
Oh, well, it was just different, right? So it didn't have the same like metal and techno and all that stuff going on that the first one did.
And look, that I talked about it already. That Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit, is a great song, and this movie gets more mileage out of that song than I think any other maybe ever could. Yeah, and it was in the originals, and it's in this. It's great. And Wake Up at the end is in the originals and is great still. But yeah, there are other great songs in those movies that, especially in the middle, they didn't visit any like goth clubs or like seedy back alleys that much in this movie. And so you don't get a lot of like great, metal and like techno type music in this because they're like standing around on the ship, or they're playing music more relevant to the scene of Neo and Trinity trying to have a moment or whatever.
In a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Or House of Nanking.
Yeah, I totally didn't know what that was, and I had to look it up when you mentioned it the other day.
Yeah.
Totally is that place, though.
I think, though, that you've hit the nail on the head of one of the complaints that I read, which was a complaint that I read that I think is stupid. I'm just going to say, I think it's stupid to say this, that Matrix 4 has a problem with callbacks to Matrix 1.
No, I think
don't-
that's the point.
I think that's absolutely the point. And the writer in this article on some website that I'm not gonna give the time of day to, because their fan persons will come after me, or maybe not. I don't really care. Their point was, well, when you put clips, so many clips of the previous Matrix movies in, you remind people that this one's not as good. And I was like, what? You're in the middle of watching the movie. You can't make that determination unless you've already decided this one's not that good.
Right. That's like saying I came in expecting a bad movie and I got what I expected.
It's because in the movie they reminded me the other one's better. It's like, what?
It's like, you literally admitted that your opinion was tainted from the start. Like, that's not a way to watch a show.
No, it isn't. And I've admitted that I've tainted my own opinion on things before when I talked about that Godzilla movie recently, right? Like, I watched a trailer, which I now no longer do because A, I get too much out of them, or B, they're completely nonsense and they don't tell you what the movie's about. So, like, it doesn't make any sense to say, oh, well, the clips that show the previous movie make me think, well, this isn't as good. The references in this movie to the first movie are great. And the references to like Matrix Revolutions are great, where they put Neo into the same exact situations. Some people say the same exact words. The whole opening of the movie being a modal of the first movie was exactly what, like, when the character that is playing Trinity did the kick over her head to kick the guy in the face, even though that was Thomas Anderson programming something to be like, that's the point. You're going through the same motions as the first one again because they have to re-free him from the and so there should be references like that.
And I think they're even, on a deeper level than that. The filmmakers are making the point like, hey, they want us to retread the movie. They want us to remake The Matrix. We're remaking The Matrix. Like, literally. Both literally and metaphorically.
Yes.
Because this movie also ends on the top of a building with helicopters and people jumping off. It's very much a, like, we're doing the same arc here. Look at us do the same arc here thing. Like, it's intentional.
This is the Star Wars remake done the way that makes me happy, because they acknowledge it. They're like, look, what people want is for the same thing all the time. But this story shows you that you cannot have the same thing all the time. These people are 60 years older, right? Life has changed for them, right? Like, all the statements about what it is like to not be in your 20s like Keanu Reeves was making The Matrix 1, and instead be Keanu Reeves in your 50s making The Matrix 4, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't get why people don't get that part of it. It's kind of just, but you mentioned the roof scene. I think the messiest part of this story actually is part of the roof scene, where they just have nothing to do with the characters until they reveal what they're going to do with Trinity. Like, they could have done this a different way, but they were trying to make the reference with the helicopters on the roof. And at a certain point, one of the helicopters just disappeared.
Yeah.
And that part really took me out of the ending in general, for a few seconds while they were like having their moment, and she was referencing Matrix Revolutions with the sun being beautiful because now she can see the code like Neo could see the code, which is cool. That all is cool, and I think it could have happened a different way and I would still be like really happy about it. But then there's like a helicopter shooting at them, and it just disappears until they jump off the roof, and then it comes back. Which makes the story for me feel not as deep, right? Like, all those things happened a little bit more organically the first time around, and I think we've already talked about it isn't as deep of a story, and that's just another reference to it. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I think you're right. Did the story feel as high staked I think along with the action being slower, every time there was a scene where in the Matrix someone might have died, I just never felt like a character was going to die.
Yeah, so I think that's a big problem this movie has. The original movie, the first one, feels so good because, again, there was no expectation that there were going to be sequels, and there was no guarantee that all these characters were going to have a good time coming out of this. And the situation and the stakes that they were in sort of seemed like it was probably a suicide mission, right?
And
they're like, okay, we're going to get Morpheus back.
You know what Cypher's doing the entire time?
You know, we're going to get Morpheus back because he's actually important. He gave us life because he believes something I'm not. We're going to right this wrong, get him back and get out, even if it takes us dying, you know?
Sure.
We can do it, you know, let's go for it. And they storm the bank. And that is why that scene works.
Yeah.
In this one, you don't get that time to develop the stakes. You know, it's like the stakes are, well, things just kind of continue as they were. That's not a high stakes proposition. Like, you know, Niobe, like 90-year-old Niobe, tries to impress that these are like, it's a big deal, it's going to cause problems or whatever, but you don't feel it because you don't see what the problems are. You haven't learned what the issues are. You know, they don't give enough time to the, you know, the fragile alliance or whatever that could cause all-out war to make you feel that this is a problem. You're just like, well, obviously we're going to do it because this is a cool movie. We're going to do cool guy stuff instead of sitting around and obeying a peace treaty. Like, if they wanted those to be the stakes, they needed to spend time and develop that, and we didn't get that, unfortunately. So you're right that it sort of felt weightless because you're like, well,
yeah,
you know,
there's a lot
the end
of
result is he goes back in the Matrix, which is just sort of where we were at the beginning.
There is a lot of feeling of weightlessness. It's funny because they even acknowledge some of it with, I don't remember the character's name, but he's actually pretty good. The Neoologist.
Oh, yeah, like the other guy on the team.
Yeah. Is he the only guy on the team other than Morpheus? I don't remember. I think so.
Other than the operator,
and
also.
The operator, yeah. Hey, how'd you feel about that hologram operator thing? That was weird.
That's kind of cool. I think it's only when they have gotten better.
I think it's only when they have the weird blue glasses on that you can see him.
Is that? I didn't catch that, but
I'm pretty sure it's only when they have their sunglasses on that they can see the operator. I've only watched it once. I can't confirm.
I can't either.
But I thought that was a cool little bit of tech upgrade building. You know, there's a lot of.
I thought it was fine. You know, you could definitely see that they had like more tricks and tools. They were better able at like, you know, able to hack each other out and like get to places that they weren't able to get to before.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't need to have a hard line every time, right?
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, but even he acknowledges, the neologist guy, I don't remember his name, acknowledges like, you know, one of the characters is talking to him, you know, everybody that shipped with him before. Also, interesting use of the word in terms of like pop culture, using shipped instead of crewed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was intentional or not. You know?
Yeah, you never know, especially that word in particular.
That word in a context of a film that we'll talk about in a minute, I guess, has been maybe debated in some circles about what it's about. Interesting use of that word. She says that everyone that's been with him has died, you know? Yeah. And the neologist, I wish I could remember his name, says, "Oh yeah, we're definitely all gonna die." And I thought that was a funny thing that like, oh okay, maybe they will all die or something.
I think it's another one of those things.
Christina Ricci was in this movie? What?
Yeah, man. Did you know she was in it for like 10 seconds?
I forgot. I missed that. Oh, she was in the board meeting where she talks about what they're gonna make the Matrix as.
Yes, she was the most worst of those video game people.
His name is Berg, the neologist. His name is Berg. Brian J. Smith is the actor who was in Stargate Universe, which was a show that should have gotten more time, I will say. I knew I recognized him. That show was going to be good, and then they canceled it because People
Christina
still-
Ricci's part is the like marketing person who comes in and is like, here's our, focus group's analysis of the Matrix, and the things they most associate with are originality and fresh. Like, and you're just like, I want to punch you so badly.
Well, she did a
Horrible
good job.
marketing
Then.
person. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was literally her entire part. She got named billing in the credits for that like one scene.
Oh, there was a dude on other crews.
Yeah, it's not like he was the only dude on any crew here. It's just the only one on that little group with bugs
Man,
that I remember.
They literally just hired everyone from Sense 8. That's what they did. I think if I had been a fan of Sense 8, I would know this, but I didn't.
Is that movie Sense 8 or Sense 8?
It's a show. It's a sci-fi show.
Okay.
And it was created by
The Wachowskis, yes.
Yes, yeah. And Michael Straczynski. I can't.
Is it meant to be pronounced as two words, Sense 8, or the word Sense8?
Oh, maybe it's supposed to be Sense 8. Yeah. Maybe it's just one word.
I spelled that wrong, but you know what I mean. That's what I'm curious about.
Well,
I've never seen that
interesting
show.
that they brought over a bunch of actors from their other show. That's cool.
Well,
I applaud them for doing that.
Directors get to pick their casts, and sometimes they got people they like. We certainly know there are directors in Hollywood who get away with doing this a lot.
Yeah.
Why not other ones? Who cares?
No, it's cool. I
didn't have any issue with it.
I wish I knew more about that show because I would have seen the cast and been like, oh, cool. They're all from that thing. This is just a realization now that's happening to me.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I've never seen that show, so I can't speak much.
I can't speak on it at all.
I think. Yeah, gosh, I don't know. What else do I want to say about this? Okay, we haven't talked about Smith. We should talk about Smith.
All right, we haven't talked about Neil Patrick Harris monologuing for like 10 minutes.
Which time?
I meant total.
Okay, so I think two things. Which do you want to talk about first? Because I have opinions about both of them. So,
let's. Neil Patrick Harris is easier.
Okay, sure. So Neil Patrick Harris is the architect type character of this. His name is the Analyst.
The architect is apparently gone along with the Oracle.
So
they've wiped them, but yet the Merovingian's back with his weird vulture outfit.
So again, I want to point out what they're implying here. They talk about the suits, but they really mean, whatever programs are in charge. And the Oracle and the Architect were in charge of the last iteration of the Matrix, and they decided those guys are out. And this guy, the Analyst, is in, and he's in charge of this iteration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. They don't really explain how that works, but the thing we know about the Merovingian is that he is a survivor, and he always clings around, right? And so he's now like a crazy homeless man in this version. Whereas he was a powerful and wealthy man in the last one.
I wish that the other exiles.
I thought it was dumb to even bring him and the exiles into this movie.
It was terrible.
A mistake.
Yeah.
It made the movie worse. That could have just been a bunch of people working for Smith, and it would have been better.
Yeah. It would have been better because then Smith, we might have had some more scenes with. But we'll talk about Smith in a minute.
So because Neil Patrick Harris is the architect type character in this, as we got with the architect in Matrix Reloaded, you're going to get a monologue where he talks at you and kind of explains everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So in this one, you get the Neil Patrick Harris explaining that people actually love misinformation. And the thing that's great is the thing that makes things true is not belief, which was the sort of the positive of the first one, or like actual truth. That's not what makes people think things. It's what they believe and what they feel. What they feel is how they decide if something is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very meta commentary on our current day and age here.
Oh, yeah. He says, as long as whatever is in their head is in their head, that's about all that matters.
Well, as long as it makes them feel something, whatever it is, true or false, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they'll believe it because it makes them feel something.
And so he talks about kind of what the architect talked about, which is the more miserable the Matrix is so far, the more compliance they were getting out of the human brain, and the
And you
more
can-
power in theory, I guess.
Yeah, if you can pump them full of information that causes them to have more feelings, essentially we get better results out of all, our little human slaves here. And I don't have the thing that's different about this one, right? This monologue versus the monologues we've gotten from this type of character in the past is it's stated in very plain language and is pretty easy to follow. If you go back and watch the architect from the second movie, that scene of him explaining kind of what's going on in the Matrix and all that, it's not easy to follow. There's like a lot of like high-handed concepts and like fancy language being used there.
It's interactive though, which is one of my my complaints a little bit. It's not. I mean, it's just one character monologuing at another character that can't interact because they're frozen in space is kind of like Nostradamus moment, and it's not as interesting as when the architect did it and the other 5 Neos were behind Neo, and you got to see, in action what the guy was talking about.
And then Keanu Reeves got to have his opinion, which was different than the previous versions, right?
Yep.
And so it was, I don't think it was meant to be analogous, and you were going to have their like time to have the bad guy explain his plan type moment kind of thing here.
Sure.
But I agree that the pause the scene and don't let anyone react to any of my statements stuff makes it fall kind of flat.
It's
also makes him.
It's also Neil Patrick Harris,
right?
And so I'm expecting jokes when he's trying to be serious. Is part of the problem.
He doesn't seem. The architect seems menacing because he's a complete monotone. He has like a very severe face and suit, and is like very clearly in control. Neil Patrick Harris is like. Seems like he's going to be a jokey guy and he wants to like have fun or whatever.
He's definitely erratic in his reactions. Sometimes he's joking and sometimes he's not. And
he doesn't. And, then it's like, oh, well, he pulls out the gun and is going to have this guy shoot Trinity. Okay, that's menacing. But then he doesn't like, you don't get to see him do it. He makes someone else do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get the same, like fear or concern as the viewer watching this. Again, it goes to the lack of stakes, right?
Yeah.
Just just the way they chose to do this just unfortunately deflated the menace or the potential like bad guy energy. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah. I don't think Neil Patrick Harris is a bad actor. I even think
and I don't want to.
He probably even played this one correct
at all.
He probably even played it correctly. It's hard after How I Met Your Mother and after all the things he's been in, if he's going to play a character straight, like he did most of this movie, and then kind of like lets out a little bit of weird, but then goes back to straight, I feel strange about it. And so it made the monologue stick out to me as like this is really long moment, I would have approved of a different version, is what I'm saying, of that. It's just
I'm with you. I think
it feels like mostly talking about complaints, but the architect or the analyst character in this one was just maybe just not as interesting as a concept, because the architect in the last one was left more nebulous and more open-ended about like, well, the Oracle says it's choice and the architect says it's not. Which one's correct? And
the architect says
push-pull is more interesting.
Yeah, the architect says it is, fate is prescribed. It must be this. And the Oracle says choice is the only path. And that directly in conflict, and it leads to interesting things.
Weirdly, the architect still gives him a choice. Go through that door or go through that door.
Oh, that's the whole thing, right? The whole point is the architect has distilled all choice and removed all of it except this one. And the choice is which door.
Mhm.
He's removed. That's the whole genesis of that whole discussion. And it gets down to the point is he can't remove choice. And so his solution to that is because he's a machine and he wants the like least amount of choice possible. You get one choice, which door?
Yeah.
Right. And that whole concept is more interesting than Neil Patrick Harris telling us about social media being bad for you and all that kind of stuff. And again, I don't want to say like he did a bad job. I actually thought his portrayal of the guy was good. I just think that the villain isn't as good as the other villains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a script problem, not necessarily an actor problem.
Okay.
Although maybe if you'd chosen a different actor, it would have been better. I don't know. It's hard.
No,
to know,
I don't
right?
think so. I think Neil Patrick Harris is as good as you're going to get in that tier. I mean,
yeah, I don't have any issue with Neil Patrick Harris in this. And it is actually very funny and fits very well because he totally looks like someone's therapist as he's like sitting there interviewing Thomas Anderson, being
I knew from the beginning that he was clearly a part of the Matrix, but I had hoped against hope that he was not the architect at the same time. I spent the whole movie
and he was
hoping
like just a
that
therapist.
he was just some sort of therapist program and that he was going to start showing up and being funny because of throwing the and then the cat starts happening and you're like, ah, dang it, he's totally the architect.
Yeah, as soon as you saw the deal with the cat showing up multiple times, you're like, ah, dang, he's totally
all right, so Smith is kind of like our last thing, and I think it's where we're going to disagree the most here.
Okay. I think my issue with Smith is I don't know ever really what Smith wanted. And it's hard for me to like, he shows up almost like a little bit like a Deus Ex Machina at the end to like save them from a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, wait, why is he here again? Like, didn't he want to get out? Wasn't he out? What is the issue here?
Interesting that they brought his code back. Why would they have done that?
Right. Why? Yes, exactly.
I don't know why after the last movie, Matrix 3, when the whole problem with the Matrix was Smith.
Well, it wasn't the only problem, but yes.
But literally he's like, the end of that movie is Neo says, you've got a problem and only I can solve it. And the problem is Smith, because he's going to get out and he's going to overwrite all your other code, right?
Right.
Why would you reprogram that back into the Matrix the next time?
And Smith tries to make the point that like, oh, we're two sides of the same coin, you and me, Neo. You can't have you without me and all this stuff. And I don't think that was ever like that
discussed.
Wasn't the lore before, right?
Maybe. Well, it's possible that that's true, right? It's probable that that's true. That there was always a Smith to counteract the one. Mm. The problem with that version of Smith was that the one didn't beat him the same way the other ones did, right? He overwrote his code.
Right, and that's what led to Smith being able to go rogue and infect people and all that.
Yeah, they called him Viral Smith, or what did they call him? The viral agent, which I thought was very funny. Mm-hmm. The humans called him the viral agent. I was like, interesting. So why? I guess if you're trying to put Neo back in the Matrix because you need Neo and Trinity, then you also have to antagonize Neo somehow, even in his current situation, and therefore you reprogram Smith as his antagonist boss. I'm very confused about how that all works and why.
I don't, and I agree with you. I think it's part of why. And again, this isn't the actor's fault. I think he does a good job of being dislikable, but the character. Hugo Weaving's character started from a place where he was like, he worked for the system. That was his whole thing. There wasn't more to it than that.
Until he stopped.
Until later when he stopped working for the system. But that's a character arc, Yeah. Like you're getting an arc for this guy. In this movie, you got a setup for a character who then shows up later for unexplained reasons.
Yeah, it's
And
funny
that is
that
not an arc.
no, it's not an arc at all. They try to say that it is with like the whole "you freed me again, man. Way to go! Now I remember who I was." But they leave him out of the movie. Like it feels like he's supposed to have 5 more scenes, you know, of like, here's my plan now that I'm freed again. Also, why Tom?
Why Tom?
And then what happens to him at the end?
Smith? Okay, so we're talking about Smith, right?
Yeah.
At the end?
Yeah,
okay,
where
so
he like changes
Smith's-
over into something else.
Smith shows up at the end and like shoots Neil Patrick Harris, right? And to like, allow Neo and Trinity and the captains to escape. And I think he unchanges, right? He was like showing that Smith was possessing the body of the barista.
Mm.
And I think that's what they were showing. Like it wasn't, Smith, the person wasn't there. It was someone overriding someone else like Smith had done in the past.
Okay. So he just left.
But then he just left. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And why? What was he getting out of all of this? Now, because Neo's leaving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does Smith want to
controls the
leave?
Matrix.
Does he? I mean, I don't think so. Neil Patrick Harris isn't dead. So I didn't understand what he was doing or why he was there or why he showed up at the end to help them.
I definitely understand why he helped them. And that's because they made the point to him that he's going to be under the system of control unless they help him, right? If Neo goes back in, then
so
Smith gets turned back into whatever code.
So I guess this is the thing I didn't understand. I kind of thought he was working with them. Are you taking it that he was also imprisoned in the boss role and not able to do whatever it is he wanted to do?
He was also imprisoned in the boss role is what I'm taking it as, yes.
Okay. See, not well enough explained. I thought he was on their side.
So this is why maybe I liked the Smith integration a little bit more. I wish there had been more scenes after, but the other thing I was hoping for was like once he was freed towards the end that they'd bring Hugo Weaving back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I desperately wish Hugo Weaving had been in this, but sadly, no.
Yeah, I don't begrudge John Groff. The guy's a good actor.
No, again, as I was saying at the beginning or when we started this conversation here, I think he did a great job of being dislikable. That was his job. He did a good job. There was not, the character wasn't given an arc to have and again, I misunderstood the arc I thought was there, and it was wrong.
Yeah.
So like it's a tough. Another one of the things they tried to do with this and didn't end up being successful at.
That's I think what I like about it is the implication that more stuff is out in the Matrix than they realize, and that there could be more to talk about in another one of these movies that gets deeper.
Well, Warner Brothers would love for you to think that there's more stories for them to tell here because they want to do more stories. Right?
I would think there's more, but I was left hoping for more instead of knowing that there was more, right? Yeah. Like in the previous movies, you know that there's more, that either they're going to tell you or they're not, because sometimes it's better to not tell you things.
Well, I think anyone can agree that the end of the first movie is good and perfect the way it is because it doesn't tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, the one of the criticisms of the second and third movies is that, yeah, they kind of explain too much. It was better when you didn't know. Right. And this movie also falls into that pitfall a little bit. It like explains stuff a little more than it needs to, I think. The mystery in some instances would have been better. But here we are.
Final thoughts. Fights they didn't learn their lesson from previous movies. They're still too long.
Yep. I think
Story light with low stakes. Enjoyment level medium to high.
Yeah.
Weird. It's weird. It's weird to have spent the whole time saying
we spent the whole time complaining about what it didn't work, but like in the end, I think on the whole, like I said, I had a good time watching this movie.
I think things that did work were simple, and that's why you spend time talking about other things that didn't work, is because those things were moments where they tried to be not deeper, because it weren't things that were deep, but like the things that were somewhat complicated or unexplained that didn't seem to make sense.
Well, and I think they did, again, I'll go back to my favorite scenes in this at the beginning, where you start to feel like he is going crazy, right?
Oh yeah, I liked
that scene. It's like, it was a great scene. They have White Rabbit playing. He's taking those blue pills. He's like, every day is the same day. They're saying the same lines over and over. It's messing with your noodle. Oh, it's gotta have bullet time. It's just like, you are going crazy. It would make you crazy.
It was
good.
I sincerely thought maybe there was a chance, until maybe the end of that White Rabbit scene, that they were going to really try to push you into thinking that maybe the entire Matrix franchise was fake and that you had watched video games.
Dude, what a mind job. That would have been so cool.
That would have been really cool. And I don't mind that they backed off of it and they're like, no, the Matrix is real and this was all real and he's got to get Trinity out. And that's fine. That's a different story. I'm saying that's a different story, and that's cool that they told a different story. But they did a good job up through that White Rabbit scene of you being like, okay, hold on. Thomas Anderson's a video game guy, and he wrote a modal that was the original Matrix. Okay, and now they're saying he made Matrix games, except for the fact that there were reflections that were incorrect. That if you spotted them the first time through, like we did, that you then were like, well, the reflections are telling me that this is all a lie, right?
That something is going on.
That something is going on. Now, when then the therapist came in, and I was like, okay, hold on. There's a chance here that whoever this guy is, we're actually going to see who this guy in the reflection is, because he's losing his noodle, and he's really Thomas Anderson, and he's been thinking, he's this person that lives in the Matrix and all this other stuff. And his self-image is Neo.
I think because those early scenes are so good and they get you thinking along those lines, then when they about face and go, yeah, actually, no, you're kind of like, oh man, like, you had the like, oh, this was such a cool idea. And then they didn't do it. Right. The only like the overriding complaint really that can be applied to almost every thing that I've had to say that I disliked about this movie is that I really liked, and I think a lot of people really loved that first Matrix movie. I also liked quite well those sequels, and from that place, it's so hard to deal with the expectations of something that are so great and bring it back to something like this, where you're just like, you can't ever manifest 100% of what people are expecting out of you.
No,
right?
and that's part of the point of this. And that's what I was going to say next, was their acknowledgement of your expectations is rampant through this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jokes, callbacks, clips.
I mean, they literally show you all the like best parts of some of those older movies, right? And the most famous scenes.
Yeah. And they go to Morpheus takes Neo to the training room, and in the training room basically tell you, no man, Neo's an old man now, and the writing is literally about like, hey, when you grew up watching that Matrix movie, you were a young person. Now you are an old person.
Yeah, totally. And that is part of why it works in the end, right? Is that because they they acknowledge, and like so many reboot movies do not do, they acknowledge the fan expectations, they acknowledge the like hopes and dreams of everyone that come into this movie, and then they say, sorry, that's not the story we're telling.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go on to tell the story they do want to tell. And I think that's why you find online like some deeply divided opinions, like people giving this movie 1 and 2 stars, and people going like, I loved this movie, I think it was the best movie I've seen in years. And that's where that divide comes from, right? Some people understood and were okay with the idea of moving along and going to this, on this other story that they wanted to tell, and understanding that like, they can't meet expectations like that. And other people going, well, I wanted my expectations met. And it's not wrong to feel either way, I guess. It's just, are you willing
that's the
to...
fault of the movie if you felt
No, totally not. No.
Like you can't go into a movie being like, well, why didn't Zion exist still? Why wasn't there this? Why wasn't there? And it's like, you wrote a different movie, and you're like I was just saying, I'm not going to give this movie 1 star because they didn't do the thing where the movie ends and I'm still wondering whether or not the Matrix was real and whether Neo has made it all up in his head. I wrote a different movie in my head as I was watching this movie. That doesn't mean this movie was bad, right? Like, or like other people that came into it being like, well, why wasn't it the same as Matrix 1? Because they made all these callbacks to Matrix 1 and it makes me feel like they should have made Matrix 1. It's like, that's your expectation. It's not what they made.
Right. And it is a case where a lot of people who give this movie, I think, or have not given it the time that it deserves, is they weren't able to put aside their expectations to watch what exists. Right. Like, this is the movie that was made. You have to accept this as the movie as it is.
Yeah, sure. And if you didn't like it on its own merits, that's fine.
Sure. And as we did throughout this entire discussion, there are things to criticize. Yeah, right. And it's not a perfect movie by any stretch. There are problems.
Oh yeah, any movie with any movie
overall,
that finds a way to mechanically include zombies when really there is no reason to, automatically gets docked a point.
Sure. And I think you could just say any movie has things to criticize about it, right? There's just such huge endeavors, so many people get involved. It's impossible to be perfect.
Saving Private Ryan is perfect.
There are problems. And there are, with every movie, any movie has some subset of problems, right? And this one does. I think the issue is that because this is such a forceful statement from the creators saying, we are going to do what we want here, not what you expect. And I think that is maybe it's a hard pill for some people to swallow,
Mm-hmm. I'd make jokes about red and blue pills, but society has ruined that.
I think this was their attempt to reclaim that a little bit. Was it successful? Again, I don't know. We've talked a lot about how it has a lot of ideas and doesn't necessarily follow through. But yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that Neo was taking literal blue pills the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, they didn't do that accidentally, right? And they know about the red pill and blue pill thing and what that has turned into. It's not like it was some, oh, wow, interesting thing that also happened on the side. They know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think, we kind of said our piece here, and I'm glad we got to talk about it, Andrew, because I didn't know how I felt about this movie for like a week after watching it. I was like, I had a good time. And then I saw a lot of people complaining and saying they didn't like it. And I was like, did I miss something? And it's like, I rewatched it and I was like, no, I liked this. It was good.
I was told going into it that people that I'd say respect their film opinions most of the time said they didn't like it. And I was like, oh, okay. That's unfortunate that you told me that ahead of time. I'm still going to watch it. I'm still going to rewatch those other 3 movies first.
Yeah.
And
honestly,
I tried to not let it color my opinion. I did maybe have a heightened sense for the things that weren't working. Maybe. But really, honestly, I don't know how. If you weren't grabbed by the idea that Thomas Anderson could be the real deal and Neo could be some sort of psychotic break, and that wasn't working at the beginning for you, I don't know what to tell you, because that part really works.
Yeah. Like I said, it's my favorite part of the movie for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I really am glad we got to talk about it, and I hope people give this movie a chance on its own merits. Say whatever you want about, we talked about it on the other podcast. The Matrix 1 is a darn near perfect movie. And
even that movie has problems, though.
And that movie has problems for sure. And the sequels have their own whole host of problems, but they're pretty good. And I think this is up there with pretty good. I think maybe I like the sequels a little better than this one, but it's like within the range of like how I feel on that day.
There's some public discourse about what this movie is actually about, and what it's allegorical to. I think there's multiple readings. Obviously, it's a story about past decisions, right, and modern consequences with your life as it has moved on, right, and that I think is a generic enough theme that you could apply it to almost any situation. There are enough generic themes in this film, unlike maybe when you got to the end of Matrix 3 and you're like, this is about Jesus.
I think there are more themes than this being about Jesus.
Oh,
but this one
definitely has laid off on the Jesus thing, and
yes,
and there is definitely more of a wide-ranging, like, you can see your own issues in this if you want to, right?
Totally.
Not issues, but like your own causes
they
or
leave,
whatever.
They leave stuff open for interpretation.
Very
a
definitely,
bit more
like
than maybe the sequels did, for sure.
Very definitely, there are open themes that you could. I don't know what you want to say. Co-opt? No.
But there are different readings you can take as to what the creators intend, right? And I think
one
intentionally.
Of them, and one of them though that I think is obviously out there, which I actually quite appreciate, is that these people are 25 years older than they were. The actors, the writers, the director, you know what I mean? The stunt doubles, everybody is 25 years older than they were. And that's part of the message. Like the people that are driving this movie is not Neo or Trinity or even the analyst. The people driving this movie is Jessica Henwick and the younger generation, right? Bucking Niobe.
Sure, yeah.
And the people that we came to see are reflecting 25 years of their lives in front of you. And that kind of is the message, I think, that is easiest to take away, is that it's about people that watched the first one when it happened, and people that are watching this one when it happened, and hey, look at your life,
I think I'm sure the Warner Brothers studio management would be really happy to hear you say that the thing you think is driving this movie is the young cast who they want to make sequels with.
It's written that way. I don't know that it
absolutely written that way.
I don't know that I emotionally connected with Berg, or
none of them got enough screen time for you to do that.
None of them got hardly any screen time.
But I think it is.
But they definitely were
true
written to be the drivers of action, and they all happen to make it through the movie.
Right? Yeah. I mean, again, Smith even says the line, "They're going to make this with or without us," right?
Yep.
And you can see the director speaking to you through Smith, going, "They kind of made me make one. I didn't really want to necessarily, but here we are."
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's tons of references about like the old and the new. I think during the monologue, Neil Patrick Harris is like, "Your skin so much better in this version of the Matrix," which is a direct reference to how bad the CGI was in those movies, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And how much better things are now, and like these are gonna happen. Things are gonna happen. Like this CGI will get better. These movies will get made, and like you can either participate or you can complain.
Yeah. And I think I'm happy that we both chose to participate and see what the vision was. And, again, you can watch this movie, evaluate it for what it is and decide I didn't like it.
Sure.
That's fair. But you can't watch it and say, well, this isn't what I wanted, and then go, therefore I hated it. That's not fair for what they chose to do, right?
Considering the thoughtfulness that I think that we've the thoughtfulness isn't in what it was in before, which was, I'm going to bend your mind about what is really real and how we make choices in the world and whether you even have choices. And that was their first go around. And this go around, they said to you what it was going to be, right? Like in the movie. And I think we spent a good amount of time uncovering that is not the bad.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of bad. But the bad is the stuff that kind of didn't make any sense, or where they lost the thread, or helicopters disappeared.
You can certainly envision a way this same movie was told, but it didn't have the, I don't know, what's the word? Like, I don't know, authorial intent or something of like the director having a voice and an opinion in the movie, where they just told this as a story that happened to Neo. And you come up with like a way less likable movie.
I think so. Yeah. I think if you told this straight and you didn't make references to the old movies and you didn't, if you didn't have, like you said, authorial voice, it would be bad. If
you just did the movie as the story that was written on the sheet of paper and didn't have all these references back and these things telling you, this is how it was, this is what it is, and that kind of stuff, you would not have come up with a movie that I think we both ended up enjoying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We talked it out. I liked it.
Yep.
I will watch it probably as often as I watch Matrix 2 and 3, which is not very often.
Yeah. Fair, right?
But that White Rabbit scene alone might get me to watch it one more time.
So good, man. You just go to your music destination of choice and just put that song on. That song is a good song. Jefferson Airplane, good on you.
Picture yourself drinking 5 espressos and slowly overtaking your
freaking out in the corner.
Oh man, I want to see somebody write the movie where it's him just losing his mind the entire time because he doesn't know if the Matrix is real. For 55 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. And, it's also, man, something else I forgot to mention. The whole thing when that first movie was coming out, the entire marketing campaign was, what is the Matrix?
Yeah.
They never, all the trailers, all this stuff, barely showed you anything of the movie because they're like, you can't understand. You have to see it.
Yeah.
So good. And this is them, coming back to that and going, was he freaking out? Can this, so good. Anyway. All right.
Hey, if you want to disagree with our opinion, we'll debate you because I think Jej and I landed somewhere in the same zone. And that means we get to team up on you. So where would we email that, JJ?
Yeah, you can email your incorrect complaints about this movie to.
There are correct complaints. There are correct complaints.
There are lots of complaints.
Yeah, but if you don't lay out new ones.
Yeah, if you want to give us some critiques or whatever, you can send those to podcast@weweregamers.com. We will happily hear them and be interested in your opinions, because I think, as we've said, there are some valid issues with this, and I'm interested to see if other people found more than we did. So send that there, podcast@weweregamers.com. You can follow us on YouTube, search for We Were Gamers, all one word, hit that little follow and the bell, get notified when our sweet videos come out. Now, sometimes including video. They're good.
There are definitely videos on some of them. I don't know if we'll stick video on this one. We didn't have a lot of pictures. Maybe we will. I don't know. But that last one we did had some video. Yeah. And I'm trying to integrate more video. It's all about time in the day.
And video, for folks who don't know, integrating video and stuff is hard, man. Video is hard.
It's time consuming.
And it is annoying and hard to do. We're sorry. We want to do more video. We're only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. Don't do this for work, obviously.
Right. We make no money. However, if you would like to pay us money, you can send emails to podcast@weweregamers.com and we will accept your money. Our opinions are open to be swayed by the sweet lucre of capitalism. What else? Follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple and Google, Stitcher. We're all on there. And, enjoy these fine episodes.